All right, so in the previous video, we started working on this hydraulic hose, and then I felt that video was getting too long. So now we're splitting it up into a separate video. So we'll get started right after this. Welcome back. If you haven't seen my videos before, I'm Rusty Oliver Man, 2020 John Deere. In a minute, you're going to see the 1020 again that we got to work on for a customer. But before we left, we took off an old hydraulic hose because it wasn't looking very good. And I got me a new one made. However, they did not have the same kind of fitting like what I had, which is fine. This one is probably better because it won't leak. But it's going to look a little different, but that is neither here nor there. So we are going to put this on now and hopefully have some success. And we're going to just hopefully get this. Oh, he's using thread tape again. Oh no. This hose you can get by with straight fittings on both ends because you can have it unplugged from the remote. But that crossover hose, you have to have a swivel on at least one. Otherwise, you'd never ever get it tightened up unless you took a cylinder off the tractor and spun the cylinder around to get it unwound. Hey, I think we got us something. So the other day when I had thought about doing this, I pretty well looked at the old one and decided I'm not even going to try to get the end off. So I just bought a new tip, and hopefully that won't be a bad thing. But yeah, I'll try to get you in here somewhere. What I would like to accomplish with this task here is that we get the hose laid in there nice. And I might have already not done that right. I might need to feed it through differently. There we go. Oh, sure. You're going to want to hook both hydraulic levers. Cause yourself a problem. But I'm trying to get it to where it lays in there as naturally as possible without a lot of extra problems, you know, and putting pressure on the hose. That's where the swivel fitting was nice when it was back here, but life just don't work that way all the time, friends. And another problem is I should probably get the right size wrench instead of doing this. But we know how that's going to go. I don't go get the right tools because I know people will complain. And that makes me smile. If it bothers you so bad that I don't use the right stuff, then I'm going to keep using the wrong stuff just for fun. Well, let's plug it in and see if it lays the right way like we want it to. That actually ouch. Probably be, well, I don't know that though, because when this raises up, that might be a bad place for it to be. We should probably start it up in a minute and be mindful of this. Now we're going to have a lot of slack on that hose, which is the way that it was. But All right, I don't really know why swivels on those, if that was the reason, because you know your coupler will turn in there. Maybe there was a reason why, but I think it'll be fine. At some point we'll probably end up replacing the other ones. Now I've got super long hoses hanging out in the open though again. I don't get it. I don't get why it ended up. That one's obviously very much shorter. So I don't know if a guy could, like a guy should tuck them down. I don't know. They've always been that way though. They've always hung down in the grand scheme of things. But I think the next time I have one made for these others, I'll get them a little, like this one a little shorter, maybe this one a little longer. And then, yeah, it'll be a little more consistent and I could like tie them all together. Because that would be a lot nicer if they were all, maybe I want to do that anyway. But this one actually, I don't know if that's in very good shape or not. They're just, until they become a problem, we're not going to make them a problem. But quite honestly, they're old too. They should just be replaced at some point, but we're not going to do it all at once. We're doing it a little over time. The worst stuff, I guess, what do you want to say? The squeaky wheel gets the grease is the expression. In other words, the thing that is going to complain the loudest is the one that gets fixed first. All right, let's see it run again and test everything out. All right, that is perfectly fine. We need to fix that loose sway block, but the hoses are safe anyway. I don't know why that sway block is loose. It's just because that bottom bolt's loose, or if there's a, I don't know how these are made. I don't know if they got another bolt coming in somewhere, but yeah, let's try our new hose. Why is nothing happening there? We're filling it with oil. I don't want to say that it's just my imagination, but I think it's faster. I wonder if that old tip was not letting through as much oil. That is a thing. Hydraulic couplers, the tips do go bad and messes with your oil flow. I think we got her licked though, friends. Well, good deal. That was relatively painless, and we did ourselves a good favor for the future. We'll just have to, that's always bothered me that those have been hanging down there, but it's made it this long. I'll get some new bucket hoses or something made at some point, and we'll get them all a consistent length. Wonder if this tractor would fit on my trailer. I'd just take it with me to town and measure them up in there. But yeah, those two old ones there probably wouldn't hurt to just go ahead and give them the same treatment as what we did. And you know, that style thing I used, now when it's locked down it won't swivel, so it shouldn't leak like these do in here. But at any rate, we're slowly making it more better. I really want to get it, if it's warm enough It probably would be today, but I'm not going to do it today. I'd rather have it be warmer than this. Try to wash that off of there. Clean that up a little bit. And then we can better monitor our leak situation and see if we fixed it. And I'd say we have. I mean, rebuilding those couplers and fixing that crappy hose probably did us a ton of favors. So yeah, let's go look at another 20 series John Deere. All right, 1020. I didn't realize until going over there that this would be a 3-cylinder job, you know? I just assumed that they were a small 4-cylinder, but they're not. So that's interesting in itself. And like I told him, this is a really nice original tractor. I mean, it's what else can you say? Look at it. It's not got a dent in it, which is very unusual for a tractor that's had a loader on it its whole life. But also, like I told him, his family probably didn't use it as a log skidder like ours was used for. So that probably made a big difference. I don't know, that might have to see if I can do something for that, because that looks like that underneath piece could use a little bit of loving. I'm trying to figure out what he's got there. His sway block he's got flipped up. That's interesting. But you can see she's been a leaking in a lots of places, kind of like mine. So we're probably going to have to, well, at the very least, we're going to have the hood off so we can investigate. But we're probably going to give this the same treatment we just gave to mine, like making that line, steel line, and replacing this, because that's leaking and making a mess. And then the other thing is, well, before this affair is done, we're going to have that loader off of there so we can work on it. I'm almost positive of that, just to be able to even get it in there. You know what I'm saying? I don't like that, but that's just the way it is. But anyway, I think where my brain was headed on its very sad train of thought is that, I mean, it's wet back in this area here, and there's really nothing up there that would be leaking. So that tells me that it's got some issues, you know. I would also say that his valve cover is probably leaking, and that's what's caused a lot of that. So we might have to see if we want to give that an issue or a deal. There's your tack cable. So that is also, you know, something that could potentially leak, I would suppose. But I don't think it would leak that much. So yeah. And what I'm suspecting now, looking at this, when I first talked to him, I did not think that, I thought it was an early one, and maybe his problem was in the front mounted pump for the power steering, but this appears to be a later one. At least it looks like it to me, unless I'm missing something. In which case that's good, because that means parts should be available. But I don't know that for sure until I really get a good look in there. And right now I'm not getting a very good look in there. Also, I need to be more careful because his is in a lot better shape than ours was. And so I'm sure that all the original stuff that actually holds the sheet metal on is probably where it needs to be, whereas mine is not. So I can't just go tearing stuff in. You know what I'm saying? I was going to try to see what year it was, See, there's a serial number tag there, which I think is the tractor serial number. And then there's one over here on the block. So I wonder if this is a reman block. He said they overhauled the engine, but I wonder if they just put in a different block. So let's see if we can find, I had looked up on the internet a while ago the list to see what this would be. 4R1C and then 27015T. 27015T would put it as a 19, if I'm reading that right, and that's really what it is, that would put it as a 1966, which is the same year as ours. But I believe that this one is after they switched the steering, because, I say that because it does not have that line going in here like mine does. And we'll be able to tell really easy if we can get a good look up at the front. I mean, because that front mounted pump, it goes right in there. And I don't think there is one, you know. There's too much space up there in the open. But where does one begin, you know? He said at one time the battery exploded, and then his gauges didn't work anymore. So we might try to see if we can, what we can do about that, make his gauges better, providing we don't go over budget of what he wants to spend. Yeah, he's got those brackets that I need. So I might have to take them off and make a pattern of them. He seemed to be cool with that. Because like I said, they're $147 a piece, and I just don't, that just doesn't really do it for me, you know? Yeah. Also, the way his loader's plumbed in is through the remotes. So to have the remotes, you gotta shove the lever forward to have your stuff working, which is not uncommon on little utility tractors. That seems to be a common theme. Not a lot of makers other than Oliver, not a lot of the other brands gave a very good way to add power beyond hydraulics to your tractor. I don't know why, but that's just the way it works out. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, power beyond is just a fancy way to say plumbing in another valve and using your tractor's hydraulic pump to do it. So you don't have to use your remote valves. You can just use the tractor's hydraulic pump and add another valve to, like in this case, run a loader. Oh, there is a dent in it. How about that? One dent. But yeah, I think it's a nice little tractor, you know. As far as original tractors go, I think if you took some time and really sanded on it a little bit and polished it, you could probably get a lot of shine back in places and have something, you know, that's really spectacular. I'm just looking it over. It's got the fuel solenoid, like I was talking about, the kind that is not adjustable. It has no screw in the bottom, and so take that for what it is. But I always like the adjustable kind. Now if we look in there, yeah, I'm saying that this is the later one, and this is closed center steering, which is fine. So in that case, what we'll need to do, as that cow is purposely trying to ruin one of my brand new gates. You know, there's trees out there, there's all kinds of stuff that cow could scratch on. But it decided, you know what? Why not use this brand new gate? It's not got any dents in it yet. Let's just warp on that a little bit. So, sure. Anyway, this thing does have quite a few hours, 4,176 hours. But it's obviously been kept in the shed, taken care of. When I drove it, I noticed that, of course, that it has no foot throttle. And I thought that was unusual, because I thought that all these tractors came with a foot throttle. So I don't know what the deal is there. it would be interesting to know, and I'm sure we'll see that. There's a lot of things I'm excited about on this one because I might be able to tell like what's missing on the one I've got by how nice this is. Like for instance, my throttle does not really stay in a position that you put it in, and this one does. So maybe there is something that can be replaced in there to help hold it, or adjusted to tighten it up. You know, mine it will kind of stay if you just pull it all the way down, but it's not as firm as this one is. And then another thing I'm very curious to see, which we'll learn, is up here there are some hood latches like on the nose of the tractor, and you pull them back to unlatch it. But I have never had the thing that they hook to. Whatever they hook to is long gone off of my hood, so it'd be neat to see what that is. Maybe I can make that better on mine. But yeah, we might as well get it off of here. It's a solid little tractor. He did shut the gas off, so we gotta do that. And it was dripping a while ago, which makes me wonder, does it also have a fuel leak? Or what does it have? Now I gotta, okay, there we go. Wow, that works really nice. He said he always shuts the fuel off, and boy, you can tell that valve works great. I'm just looking, there's so many things on it, that's got a little bit of play in it, but not nearly as bad as the one we had was. The original, if this is made the same way, where that fork goes down through there, there's needle bearings, and when they start going south, because people don't grease them, then you start getting a lot of slop in the thing, and then sadness happens, and what have you. So, all right, let's mount this horse, see if we can't get it off of there. Hopefully we don't punch through any more of our trailer, but we had probably better lay this board across the back. I was so worried about that hole, I never even thought of that that would happen, but sure. Okay. Ooh, muffler's loose. I bet that was the exhaust leak I heard. And you know what? I climbed all the way up here and forgot I took his key out. So I gotta go get that. Gee, he's got enough keys on here to run a dealership. Good grief. I don't know what we all got on here, but got a John Deere keychain. Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty aggressive exhaust leak. Might have to see if we can handle that for him too. I'm missing my foot throttle. All right, so when you drive it, I don't know if it's not charging the battery or if that's collateral damage from when the battery exploded. But you ain't got nothing steering wise. And I just flipped his remote to the neutral position, and it doesn't make any difference on the steering. So under the dash. I'll probably have to look back at that video or call him and see. But it ain't even trying to help. And our charging light doesn't even try to go off. So right there it feels like maybe it's doing something for a second, but then it does nothing. Like it doesn't even, yeah. Nothing. All right, so what have we learned? Well, he doesn't take his battery cable off, so maybe I should just leave that alone. I usually like to not do that, but yeah, you can kind of tell there was a battery episode in there. But I need to get my book out and do some reading to figure out where I want to test first. But because it is made in the way that it's made, I am suspecting that my trouble is the steering column, you know. And somewhere in there should be a line that goes to it and feeds it pressure, I would think. But what do I know? He also lamented about these tines. And comment if you know, how does one get the tines out of a Kelly loader manure fork? Because ours always had like a bolt through the back. You could get in there and take them out, but I'm not seeing, like, where is the, what am I missing here, friends? Everywhere I look, it's solid. I don't see any bolt. There's nothing back there. There must be a false bottom in this. And or I guess flip side, something broke on the loader and they took it somewhere and had it welded on. And that person welded it over top of the access point, question mark. But seriously, let me know if you know the answer to that, because I'm not seeing how a guy's supposed to get those out and make that better, because he would like to replace the broken ones, and he'd probably just like a different bucket. But boys, I hate to torch a hole in his bucket just to get his tines out. But that's bizarre. I've never seen one that was like that, made that way. But whatever. Anywho, there's just not a, with this loader on, there's just not a good way to get where I want to go, to see what I want to see. But I think I already know where I'm going to be at with it. And kind of what I'm thinking is we're probably going to end up with a different steering column, because in this particular instance, I don't know that there's much else that it could be, because it should be getting its power from the main hydraulic pump. We're going to pull off the hood and verify all that first and try to find where the lines come into that. But yeah, I mean, now I'm just looking at this here, and don't shoot the messenger here. He told me that it had power steering when it was new, but as I'm looking at this looks like this could be manual steering. Is this a manual steering box? And the only reason it helps is because you're moving along? And somehow, how could he forget that? I don't think that, surely he wouldn't forget and say that it had power steering and it really doesn't. But I'm just looking at how that doesn't look like my steering column. Granted, mine has a piece of sheet metal over it, but somewhere there should be and maybe it's back behind there. Maybe it's back in there. But if that's hydraulic, somewhere there should be a line going into it. And the other thing that makes me question is there's no slop in this at all. And I was thinking that the power steering ones, the steering wheel came up a little bit and went down a little bit. I think that I should probably do some research on my topic. I've got a service manual for a 2020, and I'm sure that it's the same steering column that they used on both of them. But I'm gonna have to investigate that, because what would be the, I don't know. I'm second guessing myself now, but I think these did come with manual steering as well, so that would be very kind of humorous if that was the case, and it's really it's a manual steering tractor, and that's why it doesn't steer like the one that had power steering. But that can't be, can it? Or did it have the early setup and the Deere dealer switched it over and put manual steering on it because it wasn't working? Man, it's pouring out fluid there. We got to figure out what that is too, because I bet that's gas. Would it be leaking that much gas? It did smell like gas. Ooh boy, it's covered with trash. I think before anything takes place, we're gonna have to try to wash it up so that we can get everywhere we need to go, because we're gonna have to have the hood off. We're gonna have to take this loader off, at least the boom section, so I can maneuver, which shouldn't be that difficult, other than we're gonna have to take hydraulic lines loose. But that steering box has got me puzzled now, because I don't know. I can't believe that would be what it is, that the tractor is manual steering and nobody remembered that. But let me show you this one, which I think uses the same steering box. Mine's got this cover over it here, but there's where the line comes in. It's down there at the bottom, and that one doesn't have that. And mine, being the early one, has this line here as well that goes into this cover. I'm not saying that we couldn't convert that one to that, if that really ends up to be what it is, that someone's put a manual steering box on it. Or maybe it always had a manual steering box and everybody just forgot about it. But I would need to know, first of all, where to get the oil from, which I think is under the floorboard. But then the return oil, I was thinking on the closed center ones, the return oil dumps inside somehow to go back where it belongs, whereas mine comes out that line on the side. So I would need to make sure that there really was a hole for the return oil to go. But I don't know. If you asked me, and I'm looking at it, I'd almost say that's either this 1020 uses a different steering box than the 2020, or that is actually manual steering. That's a puzzlement. So more research is going to be necessary before I do something I regret. But there are things on it that can be improved while we're doing our research, fixing some leaks and things. But yeah. So we'll have to probably wait. I would almost bet to wait till towards the end of the week. It's supposed to be close to 50 degrees. That would be a good time to do some power washing and cleaning stuff out and whatever. But we're gonna have some leaks to fix, because it's dripping something there pretty aggressively. I thought a while ago it was hydraulic oil, but it could also be gasoline mixed with something as it's leaving. And yeah, so we got our work cut out for us on this, I guess. But we need to make sure that this really is what's, yeah, you know what I'm saying. I've never run into that situation before though, where a tractor, I had to work on it because the power steering wasn't working, but there was no power steering to work on. But it's kind of like what it's looking like to me. So I don't know if somebody replaced something at some point, and that when it messed up, that's what he was talking about, that somebody replaced it. But yeah, we're gonna look up some stuff and see what I can come up with, and then we'll tackle it in another video just focused on this tractor. But there's plenty of stuff we can do to it. He wanted done, you know, gauges, get those working again. I see several leaks that have to be fixed, so we'll do all that stuff and we'll have plenty to tinker with. So until that time, we're gonna leave it here. Oh, friends, do you like a good mystery, or a good puzzle, I should say? Because I've just solved one, and it's quite interesting, I think. So when we did this walk around earlier in this video, that literally was the first time I ever looked at this tractor. You know, I've never seen it before today, and I had no reason to doubt his story. His story was that one day years ago, when the tractor was new, the steering messed up and made a terrible vibration, shaking. They called the dealer, and it's never worked since. And so we loaded it on the trailer, brought it home here. And when we were doing this walk around here, that's when I got to thinking, well, my brain saw this plug earlier and it threw up a red flag, but who am I? I'm no Deere expert, so I didn't think anything of it until a while ago when we were looking at it close, and I realized this isn't a power steering unit. This is manual steering. So how could a guy be so dense that he thought the tractor had power steering when it didn't? Well, it did at one time. And another thing on our walk around earlier provided the key to what I think happened. And that was the reman block tag. He said in that video when we picked it up that when they called it about getting the steering fixed, and he said then the dealer overhauled it and we didn't even ask for that, and the steering never worked again. They didn't just overhaul it, they replaced the whole engine. And I have a feeling I have put together the pieces and understand why we're looking at what we're looking at now, and there's no power steering. So you think back to 1966, would have been when this tractor was made. Same year as that tractor, which Grandpa bought new. And I will tell you, from having lived around this my whole life, he said that when he bought this brand new, he had all kinds of trouble with the power steering. Every so often, it would blow the seal out of the power steering, and he said the power steering wouldn't work, and it also then would be dumping hydraulic oil into the engine. So he calls them, and they come out, fix it. It does it again, calls them. I think it was 3 or 4 times, and finally what the mechanic did was he took that pump apart, he lowered the pressure on it somehow, and it's been in there ever since, not causing any trouble. So take that part of the story into account and to put yourself in the dealer's place. It's 1966. You're selling these tractors right and left. People are buying them. You sell Robert Rieckers that tractor, and he loves it, except for the fact that every so often the steering quits working and they got to go do a service call on their dime to fix a brand new tractor, and it's starting to annoy them. Then you've got this tractor that you sold to old lady Norman. I'm sorry, I don't know what her real name is, but that's what we're going to call her. She buys this tractor, and it's rolling happily along until one day it starts shaking violently and the steering quits working, and she calls and says, there's something wrong with my steering, come fix my tractor. So they've already dealt with that tractor, and they figured out that this is going to be a problem, these steering things. But the guy or whoever worked on it figured out, hey, we'll just lower the pressure on it. He got that one to work, and that was that. So they get to this tractor and they think, no big deal. We're going to just do the same type of thing, put a seal in the pump, go again. They pick up the tractor and they find out that it didn't just blow the seal out of the steering, but it's been leaking fluid into the engine so long, they've been running it with hydraulic oil in the engine, and it's eventually ruined the block. And so when they see that, they decide, well, this isn't our fault. So they call Mother Deere, and Mother Deere says, I don't know what you're talking about. Our tractors never break down. You're on your own. So now Mr. Dealer's furious because he owes this customer a brand new engine on a tractor that probably only had a few hundred hours on it. And it's all because that power steering pump leaked into the engine and ruined it. Now, at this time, there is no other choice other than open center steering, like on that one, or manual steering. And so after the dealer gets done replacing the whole short block of the engine, he decides it's not going to do that to me again. So he puts a manual steering gearbox on it and doesn't even put that pump back on the front of here, sends it on its way. The customer gets the tractor back. She's upset, but he doesn't care because there's nothing he can do. And that's probably what he said on the phone when she called and said, my steering still doesn't work. And they said, sorry, there's nothing we can do. And what he charged her was probably half price of what it cost him, which makes me think that that's probably what happened. The motor probably wasn't covered. He had to eat part of that, and it was and he was getting over it. These open center steering systems, he was done with it. And so he put this one back to manual steering so it wouldn't ruin the motor again. And then a few months later, they came out with closed center steering, and that eliminated the problem. But they never heard from this customer again because she was ticked off. And so they didn't, let sleeping dogs lie. They didn't go open that problem and say, hey, we got a solution now. They just left them alone, and that's how life went on. And so that would explain why we have a manual steering unit on this tractor, which originally had power steering. Now, they also in that process then swapped that cover, because the cover on the open center steering has a fitting that comes out of it. That's the fitting we replaced the other day on mine because it was leaking. And luckily for this guy, I have done research on this enough to know or have some idea of what my plan was going to be, because I always wondered what I would do if that messed up. You can get closed center parts all day long, but open center steering, not so much. And so what has always held me back with doing it to that tractor is not just partially because I want to keep it as original as possible, because it's kind of unusually configured and I don't want to change it if I don't have to. But another thing that always puzzled me was where to go with the return oil. You see on that one over there, open center means that oil is always flowing through the steering box the whole time the engine's running. So it comes from the pump up front, it goes into your steering gear on the fitting that's on the side. I guess we can go look at that one. But it comes from our pump and it goes in here. And then when it leaves, it goes down through a drilled passage and it comes out into this cover, and it goes down here and goes back in and goes on its merry way, you see, back to the reservoir. And the whole time this cycle repeats while the engine's running. And then if you turn, then the oil goes inside there because it never leaves in there. The little valves are inside there, and it just helps you push it one way or the other. But the oil is always going in a loop. And so that's why you have to have that fitting, is the point of my story. Now, on tractors that they had later that had closed center steering, the power would go in the same place, the side of the steering box, but then there was never any line in the cover. And I always wondered, where does the oil go? It has to go somewhere. It's not always flowing, but when you steer and you're done, there's going to be oil left over that's got to go somewhere. And from what I gathered was, people said, well, they drilled a passage that dumps the oil back down into the reservoir internally. And so then you didn't need the side passage, and it's got a solid plate. So that led me to wonder, could you change over an earlier tractor to the closed center steering? Because where would you put the return oil? And not having any of the parts in my hand, I couldn't really tell whether that would work or what I could do. I know people have converted them from manual steering to power steering, and it seems like there's no reason why it wouldn't work because the parts are physically the same dimension. And I think that it will in fact work, because I finally got a good picture of the bottom of one of those closed center steering things. And if I am correct, the return oil passage is right about under here. And I am assuming, this is where I am having to do some guesswork, but I am assuming on the closed center tractor cases that they just made that passage go that way instead of over this way. In which case, if I get a cover like what's on mine, I should in theory be able to put the closed center steering on this tractor, run the pressure line in its normal spot, but then I'll have to take the return oil from here and run it down somewhere where I can get to return oil, whether it be in the same place it is like on mine, or whether I just run something back over and tie into that tank. But there has to be some place for the return oil to go. But I think that it will work, because on the closed center steering box picture, it looks like the passage is in the same spot. And I know it's in that spot on here. I've seen pictures of the open center tractors where the hole is in that same place. And on the closed center steering box, it looks like they even left it a wide area where the excess oil can bleed all down into that hole and go. So I would say, if we take this off and that passage is open from there to here, then I think I can get by with a steering column and that cover with the return line port, and we'll plumb it in, and easy as pie, he's got power steering again. That's running off the main hydraulic pump instead of a separate pump. We can tee into the pressure line that runs under there and get our pressure up to it, and then we can put that return oil wherever we want to go. Now, some people are going to say, well, what do you do about priority valve? You know, usually on tractors, you have a priority valve that sends oil to the steering first and the brakes first before anything else. Well, people that have added power steering to these little tractors have done it both ways, with and without. And I think even the later ones, from some stuff I've seen, they didn't use that. They did what I'm going to do. They tee in here because the line comes from the pump right away, and so the first thing the oil goes to is the steering. And that kind of gives you a priority to the steering, because if your pump only has so much flow, it's going to go to whatever's first in line to use it, you know. And even if it doesn't, I don't think it's going to be a big deal without a priority valve, because the worst case scenario is going to be if you were trying to turn the steering wheel and use the loader at the same time, maybe your steering wouldn't be as strong as it should be, because it might give it to the loader instead, or the 3-point hitch. On these tractors, I believe that the brakes don't run off the hydraulic pump. I think they run off of the transmission pump. I can't say that for 100% certain, but at any rate, I'm going to say that unless you're using multiple things at the same time, that hydraulic pump's got enough volume to handle everything. And I think it's going to do what he wants. So that is my plan moving forward. I think before I order parts, though, I would feel better if I took the steering column off and that side cover, of course, to verify that I got that passage I need. And then I don't see any reason why that wouldn't work. You can leave in the comments if you have actual experience, not just you think about it or you read it one time on the internet. But if you've actually done this, let me know. Or if you were at the dealer and you can answer the questions about the oil passage. I've seen some rumors that somebody said that the transmission case did not get a different part number until way after they changed it to closed center steering, in which case then we're fine and probably wouldn't even need that side cover, but I don't know that. The power steering thing changed, I think, around like serial number 45,000 or so. And then I was thinking, they said the transmission case got a different part number around 90-some thousand. I called the dealer. They didn't really know. They said, oh, you're taking our business, because this guy called them to work on it. And they said, it's going to be very expensive. You probably don't want us to do it or whatever. And then when I told them what I discovered, they said, we're glad we did not take on that job then, because they don't want to have to fool with trying to figure this out, what I'm trying to figure out. But they did dig out the paper parts book for me and the paper service book and do a quick perusal to see if it could answer any of the questions I was asking, and nothing definitely. The serial number breaks in the book just had X's for some reason, so that isn't going to help anybody. But they said I could come in and use the books to my heart's delight if I want to look at them, and they could even copy stuff if I needed it. So yeah, but I would say very certainly that this tractor did indeed have power steering when it was new, and it was open center steering just like on my tractor. But when it messed up on this one, it ruined the engine, and the dealer said no more of that. I'm not going to deal with that anymore. He'd probably already been having trouble with that tractor over there, and he decided, I'm sick of this. They're getting manual steering from here on out until somebody comes up with something better. And then just a few short months later, based on the serial number like of these two tractors, you know, not too long after that, they came out with the closed center steering setup. So I believe it can be done. I know people have done it, but we're going to have to just be careful that we have to make sure that our return oil has someplace to go so it doesn't start destroying things. Because if it builds up enough pressure, it'll either ruin our new steering column, or it'll, who knows, maybe it could ruin part of the casting. I don't know. But I think it will work, because there's no reason why it shouldn't, as long as I can get the oil out. And if we take this off and there's indeed a hole down there and it comes out over here to this, and that lines up with the new steering column hole, then all should be right with the world. And this will be a fairly simple project to make it have power steering again. Because remember, it's always got a mechanical link. There is actually a drag link, and that's what that steering valve is pulling on. So it's not just hydrostatic steering, it's still got manual backup. So even if he does lose priority to the hydraulic steering, he's still got manual steering. And that's why I feel safe enough to go ahead and do this, because he's never going to not have steering. I mean, even if it's not power steering, it'll be manual steering, you know, until it builds enough pressure back up or what have you. But I think this is going to happen. I think it's going to be done. And actually, it's going to be cheaper than if it had the original setup and I had to dive through that and fix it. So this was my backup plan if I couldn't get open center steering parts, was to go ahead and convert it that way. And now we're going to find out how good that can be. And so yeah, I'm very confident that we're going to have it figured out. I mean, there's no reason why we can't make this work. Somebody built this once before. There's no reason we can't build it again. So I will bring you back in another video sometime, and we're going to take that apart, verify what I believe to be true, and then we're going to order parts, and then we'll go on our happy life, and he hopefully will have power steering. And if that works, that's going to be sweet for him, because then we will still have money in our budget to fix some of the other things that it needs and that have been annoying him over time, you know. And specifically for me, that exhaust leak. I'd like to know why that's leaking, and if we save money on steering, why then we might have money for a manifold or whatever it needs, you know, and then we can get his gauges working like he wants. And yeah, so I think we are in a much better place than I thought maybe we would be, but there are still some unknowns, but I think it'll work. So until next time, that's where we're going to leave this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you then.